The spaceship Horizon descended slowly through the thin atmosphere of Urindor 9. The surface below shimmered with strange crystalline formations that reflected the sun like scattered diamonds. Captain Elias Shaw stared out from the observation deck, his jaw tight with anticipation. This was the first time humans had approached a planet known to harbor an intelligent, physically dominant alien species. The reports had painted them as towering warriors, unmatched in strength, capable of feats no human could dream of. Fear mingled with excitement in his chest. Elias ran a hand through his short black hair, glancing at the crew around him. Lieutenant Mara Chen checked her instruments repeatedly, her fingers dancing over the console with practiced precision. "Sensors are clear, Captain. No hostile activity detected so far," she said, though the tension in her voice betrayed her unease. "Good," Elias replied, his eyes scanning the landscape. The first landing site was near a flat crystalline plain, glowing faintly under Urindor 9 twin suns. They had chosen this area for its visibility and safety. Still, the planet felt alive. The air shimmered slightly, and a faint vibration ran through the deck as the ship settled onto the surface. As the landing gear touched the ground, the crew braced themselves. The cabin lights dimmed as the ship's hull settled into the crystalline terrain. Outside, the horizon seemed endless, a mixture of jagged crystals and strange plant life that waved in the light breeze. Elias' heart beat faster. This was it, the first encounter. He suited up, the familiar hiss of his helmet sealing around his neck bringing a small sense of comfort. The alien warrior awaited somewhere nearby. No one had yet seen her clearly, only distant scans that showed a massive form moving with astonishing speed. The reports described her as a perfect blend of biological armor and muscle, something that looked impossible to exist. Yet the data didn't capture the presence, the aura of power that radiated from her. Elias led the team down the ramp. The air was breathable but felt charged, like static before a storm. Every step they took crunched against the crystalline ground, the sound echoing unnaturally in the wide, open plain. The crew kept close, though Elias moved with deliberate calm. His eyes swept the horizon, searching for movement, searching for the first glimpse of the alien warrior. And then he saw her. She stepped out from behind a ridge of blue crystal, her form catching the light. Elias froze. She was taller than he imagined, at least 10 feet in height. Her muscles moved beneath a smooth, reflective skin that shimmered in iridescent colors, shifting with her movement. Her head was elongated, with piercing eyes that seemed to see through him, reading his intentions before he even moved. She did not carry a weapon in the traditional sense, but her body alone exuded threat, a perfect combination of strength, speed, and lethal grace. The crew gasped. Mara covered her mouth wide-eyed. "Captain," she whispered. Elias held up a hand, silently asking for calm. His heart pounded, but something else stirred inside him, fascination. Fear gripped most humans, but he could not look away. The alien's presence was magnetic. Every instinct told him to step back, yet every part of him wanted to understand her, to learn what made her the apex of her kind. The warrior, Kelara, as their scanners had labeled her, watched them. Her movements were slow and deliberate, each step measured, showing no sign of panic or aggression. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying Elias personally. And then she spoke, not in words, but a sound that resonated in the ground itself. The vibration ran through his boots and into his chest. It was not threatening exactly, but it carried weight, an undeniable presence that demanded recognition. Elias swallowed and stepped forward. His crew hesitated, but he motioned for them to stay close. "We come in peace," he said, his voice steady even as the words seemed small against her presence. Kelara's head moved slowly, scanning him. She stepped closer, the ground trembling slightly under her weight. Elias noticed her muscles shift under the smooth, reflective skin, each movement efficient and purposeful. She stopped a few meters away, folding her long, powerful arms across her chest. Then she tilted her head as though teasing him, not with malice, but with a challenge. Elias felt the unspoken dare. Approach closer if you dare. He did. Each step forward was a battle between instinct and intellect. His mind screamed for caution, but his training, curiosity, and a deep-seated need to understand pushed him onward. The crystalline ground reflected the twin suns, dazzling his eyes, but he did not falter. Kelara remained still, watching every move. The crew murmured behind him, but Elias ignored them. One human step at a time, he closed the distance. When he stopped a few meters from her, he could feel her strength radiating, a subtle vibration that hinted at power beyond human comprehension. His scanner confirmed it. Her musculature was denser than any known species, her reflexes faster than a cheetah's, her endurance seemingly limitless. And yet, Elias did not feel fear. He felt challenge, a spark of human pride that dared him to stand before her unflinching. Kelara's movements became more fluid. She leaned forward slightly, the iridescent skin along her arms catching the sun and creating dazzling patterns. The unspoken challenge was clear. She wanted to see what he would do next. Elias took a deep breath and raised a hand, showing she need not fear him. Kelara mirrored the gesture in a slow, deliberate motion, almost like an acknowledgement. The first contact had been made, not with violence but with understanding. She then stepped back, moving with incredible speed to circle around him, her feet barely making sound against the crystalline floor. Elias watched, fascinated, noticing the subtle ways her body moved, the precision of her muscles, the efficiency of her form. Every human instinct screamed caution, yet every human trait in him, curiosity, determination, and courage, urged him to keep observing. Kelara stopped and lowered herself into a stance, not threatening but ready, demonstrating her power in a silent, provocative way. It was a statement: you fear me, look closer, understand me. And Elias understood. He saw beyond the raw strength. He saw the intelligence, the discipline, and the culture encoded in every movement of her body. The alien warrior was not just a being of muscle. She was a symbol of what survival demanded, a mirror showing humans their potential if only they dared to step forward. Elias raised his voice, addressing her not as a foe, but as a participant in this first contact. "I see you," he said, and he meant it in every sense. "I see who you are, and I want to understand, not fight." But Elias felt something deeper, a spark, an understanding that humans could not only survive but impress, even in the presence of beings far stronger than themselves. Kelara took a step back and then, in a fluid, almost playful motion, dashed across the crystalline plane in a blur, demonstrating speed that humans could barely track. It was a display not of attack, but of ability. Elias grinned. He knew the challenge had begun and he was ready. The rest of the crew stared in awe. "Captain, she's incredible," Mara whispered, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. Elias turned to them, his eyes still on Kelara. "Yes," he said softly, "but so are we. We just have to prove it." As Kelara circled back, watching them with the same piercing eyes, Elias understood the unspoken truth. Fear was natural, but it could be overcome. And humanity, in its audacity and curiosity, would not shy away. The first encounter had ended, but the real story, the one that would define humans and aliens alike, was only beginning. The wind from Erendor 9 twin suns carried a faint electric charge as Elias and his crew watched Kelara move across the crystalline plane. Every step she took seemed to test the limits of gravity itself, and yet she came to a halt at a distance that allowed observation. Elias knew this was not merely a display, it was a challenge. The alien warrior had made her intentions clear. Humans would have to prove themselves. Elias took a deep breath. "Everyone stay close. Observe her movements. We need to learn, not react blindly." His voice was calm, but inside adrenaline surged. This was the first true test. Humanity's survival instincts, curiosity, and ingenuity would all be measured in the coming hours. Kelara tilted her head, the reflective skin along her arms glinting in the sunlight. Then, in a movement so sudden it almost startled the crew, she leapt to the top of a crystalline ridge. Her feet barely made a sound, yet her presence dominated the plateau. She looked down at them, her eyes locking onto Elias. This was no longer observation, it was a silent dare. Elias stepped forward. "Understood," he said, his voice steady. "We accept your challenge." The jagged crystals were uneven, sharp, and slippery underfoot. One wrong step could fracture bones or tear the suit's material, but Elias did not step back. He glanced at Mara and the other crew members. "We move together, one step at a time. Watch her first, then copy her approach where possible and improvise where necessary. We may not match her strength, but we can outthink the terrain." Every time a crew member faltered, Kelara would adjust her stance slightly, as if encouraging them to continue. She was testing not just physical skill, but resilience, the ability to recover from mistakes. After several minutes, Elias and his team reached the midpoint of the field. They were scratched and bruised, but still moving. Kelara had slowed her pace, waiting to see if humans would persist. Elias could feel the weight of the moment. This was more than a challenge of agility, it was a lesson in perseverance. "Keep going," he whispered to his team, not needing to look at Kelara. They could see her eyes in their peripheral vision, following each step. "We are not here to impress her." We are here to prove to ourselves that we can endure. Kilara had more tests prepared, and she would push them to limits humans had never faced before. The next trial was less obvious. Kilara stepped to the center of a natural arena formed by giant crystalline pillars. The light shifted and fractured through the structures, creating a maze of shadows and reflections. Elias realized immediately they were to navigate the maze, but it was not just about movement, it was about perception. The maze created illusions, and Kilara's purpose was to see whether humans could discern reality from trickery. Observe the reflections carefully, Elias instructed. Not every path is solid. Some crystals are mirrors, some are hollow. Use your senses, think before you act. Kilara moved alongside them, her body fluid and graceful, guiding them indirectly. She did not speak, yet every motion was a lesson. She slowed down at moments when the humans hesitated, and she increased her pace to push them forward when they became too cautious. As they progressed, the maze grew more complex. Reflections overlapped, crystals seemed to shift, and the light from the twin suns fractured in disorienting ways. Yet Elias' team adapted. They communicated silently, used hand signals, and trusted each other's judgment. The humans' ingenuity allowed them to navigate areas that Kilara herself had considered difficult, demonstrating creativity in real-time problem-solving. At the maze's center, Kilara awaited, crouched on a crystalline platform. Elias approached her, his chest heaving from exertion but his mind sharp and focused. She observed him with her piercing eyes, then straightened. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, demonstrating that she respected their perseverance. Kilara then performed a display of speed, moving between several pillars in a blink. Elias realized that the next challenge was about reaction time. She was testing their ability to process information quickly and act decisively. Elias signaled to his team, "Stay calm, anticipate, don't react, predict her movements and adapt." By watching her patterns and learning from subtle cues, Elias and his team could anticipate her next move. They mimicked her agility as best as they could, using their own strengths, coordination, teamwork, and adaptive thinking to match her speed. Minutes passed like hours, yet Elias' team succeeded. Kilara stopped and circled them slowly, her eyes scanning each member. It was not approval alone, it was recognition. Humans had demonstrated that despite lacking her raw strength, they possessed traits that could challenge even the most physically dominant beings: intelligence, creativity, and resilience. Elias felt a surge of pride, but Kilara was not finished. She gestured to a distant canyon, jagged and deep, with a river of molten-like liquid flowing through it. The final trial was clear: cross the canyon without using traditional tools. Elias understood the lesson immediately. Humans had to innovate with the environment itself. "Look for natural paths," he instructed. "We have brains, not claws. We will use the terrain, our knowledge, and our creativity." One wrong decision could mean a fall, but humans relied on logic and adaptation, qualities Kilara's species could not fully anticipate. As they advanced, Kilara followed, observing their improvisation. Elias realized she was testing not just survival, but innovation, the uniquely human ability to turn adversity into opportunity. Every leap, every calculated step was proof of human ingenuity in action. By the time they reached the other side, the humans were exhausted but triumphant. Kilara stepped forward and performed a low bow, a rare gesture of respect among her species. Elias understood the meaning immediately. Humans had passed the ultimate test. They had faced fear, navigated danger, and relied on their minds as much as their bodies. The crew cheered quietly, still catching their breath. Mara looked at Elias, her eyes shining. "We did it," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Elias nodded, his gaze returning to Kilara. "Yes," he said softly, "but this is only the beginning. She has shown us what humans can achieve when we push ourselves. Fear is natural, but courage, creativity, and resilience, those define us." Elias realized that while humans had won her respect, she had also taught them to see their own potential. The humans had begun their journey not as equals, but as learners. Yet by the end of this trial, they were no longer just observers. They had proven that human determination and intelligence could stand against the most formidable of alien traits. Kilara had teased them, tested them, and in doing so revealed the strength inherent in humanity itself. Elias looked at the alien warrior, the sunlight catching the iridescent patterns along her skin. She was formidable, terrifying, and extraordinary, but she had also offered a mirror to humanity. Fear could not paralyze them. Challenges could not defeat them. Through intellect, courage, and persistence, humans could rise to face the unknown. The first true encounter had ended. Yet in Elia's mind, the lessons lingered. Kilara was not just a warrior, she was a teacher, showing the human race that limits were often illusions, broken by audacity and ingenuity. The horizon stretched wide before them, full of unknown challenges, but humanity had taken its first step toward proving itself worthy in a universe that measured strength in many forms. And as the crew returned to the horizon, Elias knew one thing for certain. The alien warrior had tested them, but she had also inspired them. Fear was no longer an enemy, it was a signal. Where fear existed, so too did opportunity. And humans, above all, had the audacity to seize it. Elias and his crew had returned to the horizon, but the events on the crystalline plain lingered in their minds. The trials had tested every skill they possessed: agility, intelligence, teamwork, and now a new challenge awaited, one not measured in physicality or speed, but in understanding. Kilara had shown them what humans could achieve under pressure, but she was not done. The next day, the humans were led to a region that seemed almost alive. Towering crystal spires reached toward the twin suns, their surfaces shimmering with colors that shifted like oil on water. Elias stepped carefully, feeling a strange hum through the ground beneath his boots. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it seemed to resonate with the pulse of life itself. Kilara moved ahead, her long, fluid strides effortless over the uneven terrain. Elias and the crew followed, cautious but determined. Kilara stopped near a formation that looked like a natural amphitheater. She crouched and pressed her hands against the ground, sending vibrations through the crystalline surface. The humans could feel it in their feet, their bones resonating with a strange rhythm. Elias recognized it immediately. Kilara was communicating through movement and resonance, a method entirely foreign to humans. He knelt beside Mara, whispering, "Watch her carefully. Every movement has meaning. She is teaching us, but not with words." Mara nodded, her eyes wide with focus. Even the smallest gesture and adjustment of Kilara's arm, the angle of her head, carried significance. Kilara then turned her gaze to Elias. He felt the weight of her scrutiny. It was different from before. Now it was not just challenge, it was evaluation, recognition, and teaching. He raised his hand slowly, mirroring her stance, and she responded with a subtle nod. It was the closest thing to approval he had ever felt from another species. The alien warrior then moved to a central crystal spire, extending her arms. Light refracted through her body, scattering patterns across the humans. The colors seemed to form shapes, maps, symbols, sequences, indicating tasks or lessons. Elias studied them carefully, realizing that Kilara was creating a form of puzzle or exercise designed to test observation, logic, and adaptability simultaneously. "This is incredible," Mara whispered. "She's teaching us without words. We have to understand her logic through movement and light." Elias nodded. Humans had long relied on speech and tools, but here, their minds had to adapt to an entirely new form of communication. It was a test of perception, intelligence, and creativity all at once. The first exercise required the humans to replicate a sequence of steps that Kilara demonstrated. Each step had to be timed precisely with the shifting light, and each movement had to align with subtle changes in resonance through the ground. Misstep even slightly, and the pattern would fail. Elias led by example, observing Kilara's every motion, sensing the rhythm beneath his feet, and then moving with precision. Mara and the rest of the crew followed, adjusting to the vibrations, the light, and the subtle cues. Kilara observed silently, only stepping closer when someone faltered, guiding them indirectly. Elias realized that these exercises were not about physical prowess. They were about human adaptability, reasoning, and persistence. Every success was a step toward understanding not just Kilara, but the deeper potential within themselves. Hours passed. The humans grew tired, sweat dripping beneath their suits, muscles aching from precise movements. Yet they did not give up. Every time someone hesitated, Elias offered encouragement, reminding them that fear and fatigue were part of the challenge, not reasons to quit. By the end of the day, the crew had successfully completed the sequence. Kilara's acknowledgement was subtle, a small inclination of her head, a shift of her posture, but to Elias it felt monumental. As night fell, the crystalline landscape glowed faintly, refracting the twin moons' light in brilliant patterns. Kilara led them to a sheltered area, where the spires formed a natural barrier against the chill wind. Elias studied her closely. Though she appeared stoic, he sensed a measure of curiosity directed at the humans. She had tested them physically and mentally, and now she seemed to assess their potential for cooperation and creativity. That potential would soon be tested. A sudden vibration shook the ground. It was different from Kelara's controlled pulses, erratic, powerful, threatening. Elia's eyes widened. Mara immediately checked the instruments. "Something massive is approaching," she said, her voice tense. The sensors indicated a creature of enormous size, moving faster than any known terrestrial or alien predator. Its energy readings were unstable, chaotic. Kelara tensed. Elias could see her muscles shift, readying her for defense. She turned to him, communicating through posture and eye contact. Stay calm, observe, learn, and survive. Elias understood. This was no longer a test of ingenuity alone. Survival would now require courage, strategy, and coordination. The creature emerged from a crystalline canyon, its bulk immense, covered in natural armor that glinted in the moonlight. Its limbs were long and powerful, capable of crushing crystal or steel with ease. Kelara stepped forward, positioning herself between the humans and the predator. Elias could feel the vibration of its movements through the ground, a steady, threatening rhythm. The predator roared, a deep, resonating sound that shook the surrounding spires. The humans instinctively stepped back, but Elias held his ground. "Focus," he said. "We have a chance to observe and outthink it. Follow Kelara's lead, but use your minds." Elias noticed patterns in its attacks. It relied on brute force, predictable lunges, and short bursts of speed. The humans, though slower and less strong, had adaptability. Elias quickly devised a plan. "Distract it," he whispered to Mara. "Use the terrain, force it to move in ways that trap it. Kelara can take advantage of its predictability, but we control the environment." The predator struck, but the humans' improvisation and Kelara's discipline allowed them to evade each attack. Elias felt a surge of pride. This was humanity at its best, fearless, inventive, and unyielding even against a superior force. Each maneuver, each quick decision, demonstrated that humans were more than fragile bodies. They possessed the spark of innovation and courage that could rival even the strongest beings in the galaxy. Minutes passed like hours. The predator's energy waned as humans and Kelara continued their coordinated assault. By combining agility, strategy, and observation, they forced the creature toward a natural trap, a narrow canyon where its bulk would limit mobility. Kelara struck with precision, using her immense strength to block its escape routes while the humans guided it toward containment. Finally, the predator was trapped. It roared one last time before retreating into the depths of the canyon, defeated but alive. Elias exhaled deeply. The crew gathered around him, exhausted but exhilarated. Mara's eyes shone with awe. "We did it," she said, voice trembling. "We actually did it together." She lowered herself slightly, a gesture Elias had learned meant respect. Her eyes scanned each human, acknowledging not just their success in battle, but their courage, ingenuity, and ability to adapt under extreme pressure. Elias realized then that the warrior had been teaching them all along. Fear could be faced, challenges could be overcome, and even the most overwhelming threats could be managed with intelligence, courage, and teamwork. That night, as the twin moons reflected across the crystalline plains, Elias sat beside Mara and the crew, watching Kelara move through the spires with quiet grace. The humans had survived a trial of strength, intellect, and courage. They had learned to work together, to think creatively, and to respect a being far beyond their physical capabilities. And in return, Kelara had begun to recognize them, not as fragile humans, but as worthy allies and worthy learners. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Humanity had faced fear and uncertainty, and had emerged not just alive, but transformed. They had glimpsed the potential within themselves, the power of ingenuity, courage, and unity. Kelara had teased them with challenges, pushed them to limits, and now left them with lessons that would resonate far beyond this planet. The horizon stretched wide, the crystalline spires reflecting starlight and moonlight alike. Elias understood the truth of Kelara's teaching. Survival depended not on strength alone, but on the combination of courage, intelligence, and the willingness to face the unknown. Humans had taken their first step toward becoming something greater. And as Kelara disappeared into the shimmering light of the plains, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Many challenges lay ahead, but humanity had proven itself capable. Fear could be transformed into opportunity, weakness into strength, and the unknown into a canvas for ingenuity. The bond between human and alien had deepened, built not on words or comfort, but on mutual respect, shared struggle, and the unshakable courage to face whatever the universe could throw at them. And Elias understood with quiet certainty that humanity would rise, not just to survive, but to excel among the stars. The day after the Predator incident, the humans woke to a sky painted with the pale light of Urindor 9 twin suns. The crystalline plains shimmered, casting fractured patterns across the ground. Elias knew that their trials were far from over. Kalara had shown them both their potential and their limits, but the universe rarely offered challenges in neat, predictable sequences. Elias gathered his crew at the edge of the crystalline field. "Today we face something bigger," he said, scanning the horizon. Mara leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "Bigger than the Predator?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Yes. Kalara has shown us how to survive a direct threat. Now it's time to see how we manage complexity, teamwork, and strategy under pressure." He turned to Mara. "She's leading us to it. Stay sharp, observe everything." Mara grabbed his arm. "What is that?" she whispered. A massive fissure opened across the canyon floor, revealing molten-like rivers of energy flowing beneath the crystal surface. The team froze, staring at the immense natural force, its heat and energy radiating danger. Elias realized that this was no ordinary challenge. Kalara had led them here to test human coordination and ingenuity in the face of environmental hazards, not just threats from living predators. Kalara stepped forward, gesturing toward a series of ledges and crystalline bridges that spanned the canyon. Some seemed stable, others precarious. She then moved to a high point, leaping effortlessly from one spire to another, demonstrating the path she deemed viable. The humans understood. They would have to traverse this canyon using their own wits, not strength. Elias examined the layout. The molten-like energy beneath could destroy anything that fell in. He saw the gaps between ledges, the unstable surfaces, and the reflective crystals that could mislead their perception. Every element demanded careful observation, teamwork, and improvisation. "Split into teams," Elias instructed. "Mara, you take the right path. I'll lead the left. Maintain communication. Use the environment to your advantage, and remember, we are humans." "We adapt." Kalara watched silently, observing every action. Her presence was imposing, but it was also reassuring. Humans were learning, adapting, and surviving by using the qualities that distinguished them from stronger, faster beings: intelligence, planning, and cooperation. Midway across the canyon, disaster struck. A section of a ledge cracked under Mara's weight, sending a shard tumbling into the molten energy below. She froze, gripping the remaining crystal. Elias' team halted, eyes wide. Kalara's posture shifted, not in aggression but alertness. The humans had to act quickly. Elias' mind raced. "Anchor yourself to the stable ledge," he instructed. "Use your belt hooks on the crystal outcrops. I'll find a secure path and create a guide rope for you." Mara complied, and Elias moved swiftly to assess the ledges ahead. He found a natural crystal protrusion, stable enough to anchor their rope. Using careful calculations, he secured it, allowing Mara and her team to traverse safely. Kalara's eyes followed every move, noting human ingenuity. She did not intervene. This was a test, and humans had to solve the crisis on their own. By combining observation, rapid calculation, and improvisation, they had turned a near disaster into a demonstration of human resourcefulness. Once Mara's team crossed, Elias' team faced their own challenge. A section of the path was submerged in a translucent crystal sheet, slippery and fragile. Elias studied it carefully. "We can't rush," he said. "We'll distribute our weight, move slowly, and use the reflective surfaces to guide each step." Every step required focus and ingenuity, yet the team moved as a single unit, each human supporting the other. Halfway through, a sudden tremor shook the canyon. Elias barely caught himself, but he saw the others faltering. The molten energy below surged, and part of a ledge crumbled. Time was critical. Elias shouted instructions, breaking complex movements into simple, coordinated steps. Humans responded instantly, their brains compensating for lack of strength with speed of thought and teamwork. Kalara's presence seemed to amplify their performance. Humans had learned to read her subtle gestures and anticipate her guidance without words. Elias realized that they had not just survived the challenge, they were thriving under pressure, demonstrating a uniquely human combination of courage, intelligence, and coordination. By late afternoon, the humans reached the far side of the canyon. Exhausted but victorious, they paused to catch their breath. Kalara lowered herself to the ground, her reflective skin catching the sunlight. Her posture indicated approval, a rare gesture among her species. Elias nodded to her, understanding the significance. "Today," he said, voice hoarse but steady, "we've learned that we can face threats and challenges beyond our physical limits. Our minds, our coordination, and our courage are our strengths." Mara smiled, wiping sweat from her brow. "And Kelara has shown us how to use those strengths in ways we never imagined." The planet itself was a test, and humans had begun to meet it on its own terms. Suddenly, the ground vibrated again. This time, it was not a single predator or environmental hazard. It was a coordinated movement across the plains. Sensors picked up multiple large forms, approaching in a deliberate formation. Elias' heart quickened. Mara's voice was tense. "Multiple creatures, faster than the predator. They're heading toward us. Now we work together as a team, not just individuals." He quickly outlined a strategy, using natural terrain as barriers, reflective surfaces to confuse the creatures, and coordinated movement to channel them into a narrow pass where Kelara's strength could be most effective. The humans moved swiftly, adapting to the dynamic threat. Kelara struck in precise bursts, using her strength to protect the humans while they applied strategy and improvisation. Every step was dangerous, every decision crucial. Yet the humans did not falter. Their ingenuity and coordination complemented Kelara's raw power, creating a synergy that neither species could achieve alone. The battle continued for hours. One by one, the massive creatures were neutralized or driven back. The humans used their environment to advantage, creating obstacles, guiding the creatures into traps, and improvising tools from the crystalline terrain. Kelara observed and adjusted, teaching without speaking, demonstrating how intelligence and strength could coexist. By nightfall, the plains were quiet. The creatures had retreated and the humans had survived, learned, and grown. Kelara approached, lowering herself to indicate approval. Elias met her gaze, understanding the unspoken message. Humans had not only survived, they had demonstrated potential that even her species could respect. The crew gathered together, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," Mara said, her voice shaking with relief and pride. "We actually did it together." She did not touch them, speak to them, or reward them with physical gestures. Her acknowledgement was subtle yet profound. Humans had passed the ultimate test. They had survived threats beyond comprehension, solved complex challenges, and demonstrated the uniquely human qualities that defined them. Elias looked at her, feeling a deep sense of respect. Kelara had been their teacher, their tester, and now their observer. She had teased them with challenges, but her ultimate gift was the opportunity to see their own potential. Humans were fragile in body, perhaps, but indomitable in mind, courage, and creativity. As they returned to the horizon, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had faced fear, danger, and the unknown, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Kelara had shown them that the universe measured strength in many ways, but human ingenuity and teamwork were forces that could never be underestimated. And as the twin moons rose over the crystalline plains, reflecting off the spires in brilliant light, Elias knew that this was not the end. The universe held more challenges, more mysteries, and more tests of courage and intellect. But humanity was ready. They had faced fear and thrived. They had learned from a warrior beyond their understanding. And above all, they had proven that even in a universe of overwhelming power, the human spirit could shine. The morning light on Erendor 9 was pale and crisp, casting long shadows across the crystalline plains. Elias stood at the edge of the horizon's landing platform, looking out over the landscape that had tested him and his crew in ways no human had ever experienced. The twin suns reflected off the jagged crystals, scattering light like 1,000 tiny stars. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to feel pride. They had faced unimaginable challenges, survived predators, traversed deadly terrain, and learned lessons that would echo through humanity's future. Kelara appeared on the horizon, moving toward them with her usual grace. Elias watched her approach, noting the subtle shifts in her posture that indicated approval. She did not speak, but her presence carried a weight of acknowledgement that humans could understand without words. Elias felt a deep sense of respect for her. She had been both teacher and judge, and now, perhaps, a witness to what humanity could truly accomplish. "Prepare yourselves," Elias said quietly to the crew. "Today will be our final lesson with Kelara." He adjusted his helmet and signaled the team to follow. Each crew member moved with calm determination, their previous trials having forged a confidence that came from experience, not fear. Kelara led them to a plateau overlooking a deep valley. The floor of the valley shimmered with crystalline rivers of energy, twisting and shifting unpredictably. This final test was unlike the others. It was not about individual skill or speed, nor even just strategy. It was about vision, unity, and the ability to understand patterns across vast complexity. Ilias knew instinctively that the test was designed to measure how humans worked together, not merely how they survived. The alien warrior moved to a central crystal spire and extended her arms, letting the light refract through her body. Patterns appeared on the ground, geometric shapes, energy flows, and sequences that seemed almost alive. Kalara's movements corresponded to shifts in the patterns. The humans quickly realized this was a form of complex environmental puzzle, one that required observation, reasoning, and cooperation to navigate successfully. Ilias crouched beside Mara. "We need to understand the sequence, predict the flow, and move in coordination. Watch her carefully." "Every motion has meaning." Mara nodded, her eyes scanning the shapes and lights. The humans spread out, taking positions that allowed them to cover more area while remaining within communication distance. Each step they took had to be deliberate, measured, and informed by observation. The puzzle demanded constant attention. Some sequences appeared to repeat, but subtle variations required adjustment. The energy rivers shifted unpredictably, forcing the humans to react and adapt without hesitation. Ilias noted the way Kalara's hands moved, the subtle pulse in her muscles, and the slight tilt of her head. Every detail carried information. Hours passed as the humans moved across the plateau, their muscles tiring and minds straining. But each member adapted, learned, and adjusted. One by one, they began to anticipate the shifts in the energy flows, predicting changes before they occurred. Coordination improved as instinct and observation merged, creating a rhythm that allowed them to move as a single, cohesive unit. Kalara observed silently, occasionally altering her motions to introduce new variables. Ilias realized that she was not simply testing their intelligence. She was teaching them how to see connections, adapt to change, and act decisively under pressure. Humanity was not being judged for physical strength alone, but for the capacity to think, respond, and innovate in the face of complexity. At the final stage of the puzzle, a large crystalline platform began to rise from the valley floor, supported by shifting energy flows. It was unstable and unpredictable, yet this was the path to the exit of the plateau. Ilias assessed the situation quickly. "We need to distribute our weight evenly," he said. "Communicate constantly, watch each other, and anticipate movements." Every move demanded full attention, yet the crew moved as if they had done this 1,000 times. They were exhausted, yet their resolve remained unshaken. Kalara remained near the center, moving fluidly as she monitored their progress. Her eyes never left the humans, yet she did not intervene. Ilias understood that the lesson had become more profound. Humans could survive not because of Kalara's oversight, but because of their own capacity for ingenuity, courage, and cooperation. One particularly dangerous section required crossing a narrow ridge over a deep chasm. The energy below pulsed unpredictably, and one misstep could send a human falling into the molten-like currents. Ilias stepped forward first, testing the stability of the ridge. He held out his hand for Mara, guiding her carefully. Each crew member followed, trusting one another, adapting with each tremor and shift. At the final moment, as the last human reached safety, Kalara lowered herself completely to the crystalline floor. Ilias recognized the gesture immediately. She was granting them respect, acknowledging that they had completed the ultimate challenge. Her posture radiated admiration without a word. The humans had demonstrated not only survival, but mastery of observation, strategy, and teamwork. Ilias approached Kalara, standing a few meters away. The alien warrior's reflective skin shimmered in the twin suns, creating patterns of light that danced across the plateau. Ilias bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had learned from observing Kalara's culture. Kalara inclined her head, a rare acknowledgement of equality and recognition. Mara joined him, and the other crew members gathered, exhaustion and exhilaration written clearly on their faces. "We've learned more than I imagined," Mara said softly. "It's not just about survival, it's about understanding, cooperation, and courage. It is intelligence, creativity, persistence, and the willingness to face the unknown without hesitation." He paused, looking out over the shimmering plains. "This is what defines humanity. This is what allows us to thrive in the universe." Then, with a sudden burst of speed, she leapt to the edge of the plateau and disappeared into the distance, moving across the plains like a shadow. Elias and his crew watched, understanding that her lessons were complete, yet her presence would remain in their minds forever. The humans returned to the horizon, their steps light despite exhaustion. Elias reflected on the journey. The crystalline plains had tested them physically, mentally, and strategically. They had faced predators, traversed dangerous terrain, and navigated complex challenges. They had learned to work together, to think creatively, and to adapt under pressure. And through it all, Kelara had provided guidance without taking control, allowing humans to prove their worth. Inside the ship, Elias gathered his team. "We've learned something important," he said. "Fear is natural, but it does not define us. Strength is valuable, but it is not everything. Our ingenuity, courage, and unity are what make us capable of facing any challenge." They had seen the proof in action, experienced the trials firsthand, and felt the transformation within themselves. What had begun as fear and uncertainty had turned into confidence, understanding, and pride. Humans had met the unknown and risen to the occasion. Elias looked out the viewport at the crystalline plains, now bathed in the soft light of the setting suns. He felt a profound sense of hope for humanity. They were fragile in comparison to beings like Kelara, yet their minds, hearts, and spirit were unmatched. In the vastness of the universe, humans had proven that they could not only survive, they could thrive, innovate, and inspire. Kelara's image lingered in his mind, a symbol of challenge and potential. She had teased them with trials, tested their limits, and shown them the consequences of courage, ingenuity, and perseverance. Her presence had been a catalyst, revealing strengths the humans had not fully recognized in themselves. As the horizon lifted off the crystalline plains, Elias felt a surge of determination. Humanity had been tested, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and had proven that their spirit was unbreakable. The twin suns set on Erendor 9, casting long shadows across the crystalline landscape. Elias knew this was only the beginning. Many challenges awaited humanity in the universe, but the lessons learned here would remain forever. Fear could be transformed into courage, weakness into ingenuity, and the unknown into opportunity. And in that knowledge, Elias found the true meaning of humanity, not in strength, not in numbers, not in speed, but in the indomitable will to rise, to innovate, and to excel, even when the odds seemed impossible. As the stars stretched across the sky, Elias felt a quiet pride. Humans had taken their first steps toward greatness among the stars. Kelara had been their teacher, their challenger, and their witness. And humanity, now stronger and wiser, would carry the lessons forward, ready to face whatever the universe could throw at them, unafraid, united, and unstoppable. The journey was far from over, but Elias knew this truth. Wherever humans went, they carried within them the spark of ingenuity, courage, and resilience. And that spark, tested, proven, and celebrated, would light their path across the stars, inspiring all who would witness their rise. Erendor 9 faded beneath them as the horizon soared into the sky. Elias looked at his crew, at the humans who had faced fear and triumphed, and he smiled. Humanity had proven itself worthy, not by brute force alone, but by the power of mind, heart, and spirit. And somewhere across the crystalline plains, Kelara watched, a silent guardian and witness, knowing that humans had claimed their place among the stars, not as fragile observers, but as true masters of courage, ingenuity, and potential. The universe had tested them. Humans had risen. And the story of their triumph would echo across worlds, a testament to the indomitable spirit that defined their kind.